Welcome to the Tzurba M'Rabanan Hilchot Shabbat Program with Rabbi Shalom Rosner. Tzurba is a revolutionary halacha sefer which guides you through over 300 topics in Jewish law in a unique signature style. In this weekly series specifically, Rabbi Shalom Rosner learns through the Tzurba Hilchot Shabbat volumes, helping us all master the Halachot of Shabbat in just 2 years. Tzurba volumes are available for purchase worldwide on Amazon. And to learn more about Tzurba, or for those in Eretz Yisrael looking to purchase volumes, please head over to tzurbaolami.com. For more information, see the description below. And now, Rabbi Shalom Rosner.
Okay, let's get into our next shiur. We are in Tzurba, volume number 21. We are in this last shiur. We'll split it into two, but the last shiur in this volume, which is all about relating to medicine and other issues. We had the last shiur, which spoke about pikuach nefesh and violating, doing anything for pikuach nefesh on Shabbos or fruit on Shabbos. What is one allowed to do? What about saving the life of a non-Jew? How much time do they have to live? So this year we'll get into what about limb loss, risk of a limb loss, sakanas aver. What about a chola she'ein bo sakana? Who is called a chola she'ein bo sakana? What is one allowed to do for a chola she'ein bo sakana? Very important issues. And then next year we'll get into the last year for this volume, which will be medicine and medical treatment and exercise, physical exertion on Shabbos. We will get to that. So we are on page 325. We are up to the last shiur number Zion in this volume. Again, this shiur is dedicated in memory of Dr. Robin Goldman, and this volume is the Mervis family volume. We thank many of the donors and sponsors for all these volumes and all of these shiurim as we continue learning Hilchot Shabbos, very important Lamaisa halachas that are coming up. So we spoke about if somebody's life is in danger. Obviously, a Jew could even do an Issa Daraisa for them, do whatever is needed. What about the loss of a limb? What about the loss of a limb? So this is a transitionary related topic because it relates to the pikuach nefesh previous topic, and it relates to chola she'ein bo sakana, which is this topic. So the Gemara Maseches Avodah Zarah and Daf Chav Ches, you have in there source number 1, talks about a case of losing an eye. And as we'll see later, this doesn't only mean losing an eye, even losing the function of the eye, not just the physical eye. That's called sakanas aver. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Zucher Bar Tovia Marav, source number 1, ayin shamarda, you have an eye that literally popped out of its socket, and it's in danger of being lost. Mutar l'kochla b'Shabbos. One is allowed to apply some type of eyeshadow, which clearly is not just meant for beauty in the days of the Gemara, but it was some type of healing, had some type of healing power. So you're allowed to put that on Shabbos. Savar binei. They thought, maybe this only applies if you ground it. You did the daraisa, you ground the eyeshadow before Shabbos. But to grind it on Shabbos or to bring it through Rosh Hashanah would not be allowed. That's what they thought, and they said, no, that's not the maskana. Rabbi Yaakov said, in the name of, explain what Rav Yehuda meant. Afilu, Rav Yehuda was a Talmud of Rav, so he's explaining what he meant. Afilu mishchak b'Shabbos v'asir mutter. It's mutter, even to do a daraisa. It's mutter for the sake of the eye. Why? So the question is, what does this last line mean? Nafak mar Shmuel v'darash. Shmuel the doctor went out and darshaned ayin shamarda, an eye that's in danger of being lost. Merda went out, it rebelled literally. Mutar l'kochla b'Shabbos. You're allowed to color it, which is save it on Shabbos. My time of why? Here's the line: the Shuryani de'ena be'uvnisa deli batalu. Shuryana de'ena, the tendons of the eye, be'uvnisa deli batalu, are connected to the heart, are connected to the valves of the heart. What does that mean? The tendons of the eye are connected to the heart. What is the Gemara trying to tell us? So the Rosh understands, you know what the Gemara is telling us? That the eye is potentially pikuach nefesh. What does it mean? It looks like the eye, but it's connected to the heart, which is pikuach nefesh. Meaning, mashma, according to the Rosh, that if it's just sakanas aver per se, you know for sure that there is no danger to life. There's only danger to limb. This Gemara seems to tell us that you cannot be mechal Shabbos with a daraisa just to save a limb. It's only because this limb is connected to the heart. That's what the Gemara is telling us. Shuryani de'ena be'uvnasa deliba talu. That's what the Rosh says. Look at the Rosh on page 326. Afilu mishchak samana b'Shabbos v'aisinu b'Shabbos Rav Mishari. It's mutter. Why? My taima shuryana deina b'li batalyon. The tendons of the eye are connected to the heart. V'ika sakanas nefashos. And says the Rosh, it's pikuach nefesh. Pikuach nefesh. Shaminan mehacha. What do you learn from here? Says the Rosh. Demashu sakanas aver. If it's just sakanas aver, pure limb, and you could somehow determine that it's only a limb, it's not life, so then you would not be mechal Shabbos daraisa. I will be sorry derabanan mechalan. You could do a derabanan. After all, even if you ground it yesterday, taking the medicine today is derabanan. So clearly you could do a derabanan to save a limb. But the Rosh says that to save a limb to do a daraisa, that is one is not allowed to do. That's what the Rosh says. Tosfos does not say that. Tosfos elsewhere, Tosfos in Sukkah says no. Sakanas Aver has the status of Sakanas Nefashos, even if it's not literally Sakanas Nefashos. Sakanas Aver, source number 3, because Sakanas Nefashos, Afilu Lachalav as a Shabbos, Kedemucha Berkan Mamidim. Tosfos in Sukkah quotes the Gemara Avodah Zarah, Gabi Ein Shemarda. Tosfos doesn't understand that as limb, it's connected. It means it has the same status. So Machlokas Rishonim, the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rosh, meaning Me'ikar Adin. Me'ikar Adin. Again, we'll see this is theoretical. Theoretically, if a sakana of an aver that you would lose the loss of a limb on Shabbos, but there's no sakanas tefashos, one is not allowed to do an Issa D'Oraisa. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Chav Ches Sif Yud Zayin, in source number 4. Chol shenafal machbas choli lemishkav ve'ein bo sakana. A chol she'ein bo sakana, their life is not in danger at all. Ein machal and alav is a Shabbos b'Issa D'Oraisa. You cannot be machal Shabbos with a D'Oraisa. Afilu yesh bo sakanas aver. Even for a sakanas aver, one is not allowed. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Any of the Nosei Kelim argue? Not here in Hilchos Shabbos, but maybe in Yeridea. There's a shach. There's a shach in Yeridea in Siman Kufnun Zayin. What's that siman? That's the siman of Yarg Val Yavar. What's it doing there? That's where the shach says. There's a Radvaz that has a tshuva like this too. If there's a sakanas aver, somebody says you could pay money to save your aver. If there's a danger to an aver in for Yarg Val Yavar or any of these cases, says the shach, if one is threatened with being killed, again, he cannot violate a lo saseh if he's able to save himself by paying. If he's able to save himself by paying, he's not allowed to violate. What about losing a limb? What about losing a limb instead of violating? So says the shach, nira lakula. I think to save a limb, you could violate an isser. That's what the shach says. To save a limb, you could violate a daraisa. So you put that together, maybe included that, meaning even isser daraisa of Shabbos. The shach seems to say that to save a limb, you could violate an avera. So remember, what did the Shulchan Aruch paskin like the Rush, and the Rush said to save a limb, you're not allowed to violate. If it's just a limb, it's not pikuach nefesh. You're only allowed to do a derabanan, not a daraisa. It sounds like from the shach you could do a daraisa to save a limb, but the Pri Megadim is not convinced because the shach might be talking about other isurim that are not as chamor as Shabbos. Pri Megadim writes in Mishpat Zozav in Shin Chav Ches. That's back in Hilchos Shabbos. Says the Pri Megadim in source number 6. On my page 327, somebody is ma'anes im lo yases Torah. Either violate this is daraisa, or I'm going to kill you. Again, if it's die or I'm going to kill you, do this avera. So besides the big 3, you violate the avera. But what if it's sakana saver? Mavur b'shach b'sadi l'kula. The shach says you do the avera. V'yesh lomer zeh b'shar lo saseh hashabas tochamer lo. It could be that the shach is not arguing on the Shulchan Aruch. Could be the shach is only talking about other isura daraisa, but when it comes to isura daraisa of Shabbos, which is more chamor, so maybe one cannot violate the daraisa. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't quote anyone who argues with the Shulchan Aruch, but again he says if there's any chashash that this sakanas aver is not just sakanas aver, but it's connected to sakanas tefashos, then of course you violate. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Some limbs, and aver here means limbs or organs. Some limbs, B'shari varim im rofe omer she'im lo yirapu ha'aver yuchal lavo lebikuach nefesh harizu k'shar chol yesh bo sakana. If there's a type of aver or limb that could lead to pikuach nefesh, then obviously you violate even with a daraisa. And the Nishmat Avraham, Dr. Abraham says, Bezman hazeh, rubo kukulo, that the sakana of an aver is connected to the sakana of a nefesh. Says the Nishmat Avraham, source number 8. Ubizmanenu shekemat ein locha sakanas aver shlo karucha gam sakana kolaguf. It's very hard to imagine any type of sakana of a limb or an organ that is not connected to the whole limb of the body. Ide harala, right? If certain parts of the body is going to die, then it could poison and cause danger to the rest of the body. Nikra says sakanas kalagufs. Therefore, basically, in our day and age, sakanas aver is called. So we had a theoretical machlokes about sakana. If it's just sakanas aver, the Rosh says you can only do a Rabbanan. Tosfos says you can do a daraisa. The Shulchan Aruch Paschas like the Rosh. Maybe the Shach Paschas like the Tosfos. Maybe not. But either way, Lamaisa, it seems like every sakana aver is like sakana kalaguf, and therefore you could do a daraisa. Nigra says sakanas kalaguf or mechalon on Shabbos they chol kazeh. Gama de Yisrael va'afilu Yisrei Torah. Even this is daraisa. Sakana aver einena dafka, and Dr. Abraham points out that sakana aver, as we said before, it doesn't only mean physically losing the limb. Einena dafka sakana shall ibud ha'aver legamre, that you lost the limb. Ela afilu asakana shehaver yishar chalash kol yamav. Even the danger that the aver is just going to remain weak and limp. V'lo ye roy l'malachto k'derech olam, and not usable. Kigonchi et soleya, you'll be limping al yerecho. Osha yalo tifal karoy, the hand won't function properly. Gamzeh, that's also sakana aver. Doesn't only mean you're physically going to lose it. So again, in the rare situations that it's no danger to life, it's just sakana aver. It seems like the poskim say you cannot do a daraisa. But the Aruch HaShabbos says you can do a derabanan. You can do a derabanan. And you can do a derabanan, the Aruch HaShabbos says, even if you're healthy, but you might lose the ability to use the limb, you're still allowed to violate the derabanan. Okay, so that is one category. We spoke about pikuach nefesh last time, and this is what we just spoke about, sakanas aver. Is that automatically pikuach nefesh? Lamaisa, we said yes, but theoretically we said there could be a difference. So now let's get into the next category. We spoke about chola sheyesh bo sakana. Now what about a chola she'ein bo sakana? What about a chola she'ein bo sakana? So everyone agrees that a Jew cannot do an Isser D'Oraisa for someone whose life is not in danger. A chola she'ein bo sakana. But as we'll see, there are a number of kulas that apply to a chola she'ein bo sakana, as we will see regarding Amir La'akum and the like. So first, let's talk about what is the category of chola she'ein bo sakana. And as we'll see, next year, this type of chola can take medicine on Shabbos. But we'll get to that next time. So what is a chola she'ein bo sakana? What's the category? Says the Ran. Shabbos daf lamed tesam abeis and daf erif. Says the Ran. If somebody has discomfort but is functioning normally, so then he's not a chola she'ein bo sakana. So you can't ask a guy to do anything for you. Right? If the person is in bed, nofel lemishkav, that's a chola she'ein bo sakana. And that's how we usually define it. Are you bedridden? Umistavra. When are you allowed to do amir la'akum b'makom chola she'ein bo sakana? Somebody who's bedridden, who can't function and get out of bed. That's the lashon, mischazik v'holech. But if somebody has a headache, somebody doesn't feel well, but he's functioning fine, right? But he's just has discomfort, then you can't ask a guy to do a malacha. That's low, right? The Ran says that you can't do that. The Maggid Mishnah has a different way of formulating chola she'ein bo sakana. The Maggid Mishnah says chola kol gufo. That's his lashon of chola she'ein bo sakana in this category. So when the Shulchan Aruch quotes the Ran, the Rama adds in the lashon of the Maggid Mishnah. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Shin Chav Ches, right? All of these, that was what we have been talking about the past couple of weeks. And Shin Chav Ches Sif Yud Zayin. Chola, Shin Afal Mach was Chola Mishkav. A chola that is bedridden, ve'ein bo sakana, but his life is not in danger. Or even, again, what does not in danger mean? It can't come to danger. Oh, Rama es sheyesh lo mechush mitzar. He has a mechush, he has a pain that he's uncomfortable. V'chalim eno kol gufo, and his whole body is feeling pain. Sh'oz aval bi sholech v'kenei kanaf al mishkav dami. Even if he's out of bed, but if his whole body is affected, he has the status. So that person, again, you're allowed to ask a non-Jew to do refuah. We'll get to again the treatment, but first we're still defining. So somebody who's bedridden, says the Ran. The Maggid Mishnah says somebody who's chole kol gufo. Rav Nissen Karel's writes in Chut Hashani, even if you yourself are a martyr and get out of bed and schlep and go to shul, but if you wouldn't have shul, if you wouldn't have a Shabbos meal, you'd be in bed, that's called as if you're in bed. That's called nafal mishkav, and you're in the category of a chol she'en bo sakana. Says the Chut Hashani, source 12. Begeder nafal mishkav. Eino dafka shenafal legamri lemishkav. It doesn't mean totally you are bedridden and you don't get out. Ela afilu imhu misgaber umisametz laleches. Let's say you struggle and you push yourself to get out of bed. Kigon lebeis haknesses l'spalo. You want to daven. Mikri nafal mishkav. That's called nafal mishkav. Kivan delule his amtsuso, because were it not for his extra effort, hayab mishkav, he would be in bed. If a normal person would be in bed without having the Mesiras Nefesh to get to shul, he's called nafal mishkav, and he would be able to have the treatment of a chole she'en bo sakana. What are some examples of this? Rabbi Badner in the Laws of Refuah in the next source in 13 discusses a person whose illness is not life-threatening, gives examples, but it feels so sick he stays in bed. Somebody has severe cold or the flu. Even if someone whose illness does not force him to stay in bed, someone with severe diarrhea, but it causes his whole body to hurt or feel weak, that's a chol she'en bo sakana. This is very important because some people try to martyr and say, I can't take medicine. No, if your whole body is ill and you feel and you have shaking chills. Next, when an illness causes a person so much pain that he cannot function normally. Again, he's incapacitated and he's called a chol she'en bo sakana if he has pain and discomfort and he can't function properly. If you look in the footnotes, he quotes from Rav Shechter in Bikvei Atzon that an entire category of chol she'en bo sakana is someone who cannot function normally. So it doesn't only mean that you're sick, but you can't function normally unless you do something. So that's a big nafkamina. Let's say somebody takes medicine for, or takes certain types of treatment. I wouldn't call it medicine for, he quotes in the two examples on the bottom, for ADHD, or let's say fertility treatments. So is the person sick? The person's not sick, but they can't function normally in certain areas of their life. So maybe that's a chol she'en. There might be other heterim if it's a regimen of taking it, not just on Shabbos, but that's an example of not being able to function normally totally, and therefore you might be in this category. For certain purposes. Or he quotes a severe fungal infection, a yeast infection, a painful arthritis, when a person can't function generally as they're supposed to, so that they're in this category. He quotes also in the Nafshi Be'esh She'elasi, he quotes in source 14 that it could even be mental illness. If you don't take something, you wouldn't be able to function because of certain disorders, schizophrenia, personality, whatever it is. So those are also potential chol she'en bo sakanas, and therefore one would be able to take treatments. So we spoke about sakanas aver, what that is considered, and we spoke about what's a chol she'en bo sakana, about nafal mishkav, and the like. There's another category that might be included in chol she'en bo sakana, and that is ketanim. And then after this, we'll get to what one is allowed to do. Ketanim. So there are some that say a blanket heter, a katan, is a chol she'en bo sakana. So how far do we go? So the Rama quotes this in two places, in Shir Chav Ches Yud Zayin, source 15. Mutter lomar le'eno Yehudi, la'asos tavshil lekatan she'en lo malochal. If you wanted to give food to a child, to stam tzarchei katan, kechol she'en bo sakana dami. Wow, the tzorachim of a katan are lachol she'en bo sakana. So he says, seems to be explicit. Katan, what's a katan? 10 years old, 12 years old, any katan. And the Shulchan Aruch in 16 also, in Reisha and Vav, that's earlier. Eino Yehudi shilik es aner b'shvil Yisrael. If a non-Jew likes a candle for a Jew, straight out, there's an Isra Ana from that candle. Asr lakol. Afilu mishol hulik b'shvilo. Avalam liko litzarcho. If the non-Jew lit it for himself. O litzarcho Yisrael, or for a chole. Afilu ein bo sakana, even a chol she'en bo sakana, you can have a non-Jew do malacha for. O litzarech ketanim, do chol she'en bo sakana, litzarech of a katan. That's the second place the Ramah says it. Mutter l'kol Yisrael l'shamish la'oro. So he does it for himself or for a chol she'en bo sakana. That's mutter, or for a katan. So you see, it seems like katan, chol she'en bo sakana. The problem is that there's a Gemara in Eruvin. Gemara in Eruvin seems to say that even a katan is not an automatic heter. not an automatic heter. Right? The Gemara talks about that in the days of old, they thought the science of the times was you had to warm up hot water and rinse and wash the baby with hot water before and after the bris. What happens if the water spilled out? Ervin Samaches, Surah 17. The water spilled out. Well, let's ask the mother if she needs warm water. Because she just had a baby. She's a chol she'ein bo sakana. So if the mother needs it, he can warm up a little more for the baby too. What do you mean? The baby's a katan. Why don't you have an automatic heter for the katan? So the Gra says, you see from here, only if there's a real need. Only if there's a real need, not an automatic katan heter. Not automatic katan heter. So this is unclear exactly when do you apply this. The Tzurvis Arletzion, Rabbi Shalom Rosner understands it that it's still a blanket heter. It's a blanket leniency. The Arletzion says, katan at shloshas reishona nechshav l'chol she'ein bo sakana. Up until 13, a child is called in this category. And therefore we'll see what you're allowed to do. Umutar lasos b'shvilo kol ma shemutar lasos l'chol she'ein bo sakana. Which we'll get to, about a guy doing a da'araisa. The Shmir Shabbos says, there's different ages, maybe below the age of 9 or 10, when they're weaker, right? That's the Shmir Shabbos in source 20. Yelad ad gil teisha or eser, lefi matzaf hitpatchuto, depending on their development. Chalashu begufo v'zachal tibu miyuchad, chazal maters. There are different allowances, but as the Shmir Shabbos says, which I think we should take with us, everything depends on the case. You have to figure out whether it depends on the case. If you could give the child something without violating, that's definitely better. But if you have to get a guy, you have to get a guy. Okay, there are other, he quotes here that there are other different ages given, age 6, age 2 or 3, so different dayas in the poskim. So this is all the category of a chol she'ein bo sakana. Somebody who is bedridden, somebody who's in such pain that they can't function properly, maybe certain types of katanim. So what exactly are you allowed to do? So we said category 1, chol she'ein bo sakana, or potential chol she'ein bo sakana, a Jew is allowed to do a daraisa. Next level down, chol she'ein bo sakana. All in these categories, a goy could do a daraisa. A goy could do a daraisa. That's one level down. We'll get to what a Jew is allowed to do. But a goy working for me, doing a daraisa, that's an issa d'Rabbanan. We pass Amir la'akum is an issa d'Rabbanan. For me to ask a goy to do something. If I ask a goy to do a malacha d'Rabbanan, that's called a shvus, a double d'Rabbanan. But we're saying here, even an issa d'Araisa. A goy is allowed to do an issa d'Araisa for a Jew. So that's an isser. That's a isser d'Rabbanan of mir la'akum. But l'chol she'esh bo sakana, chol she'ein bo sakana. Source 21. It's the Gemara. Shabbos Kuf Chavtes. Kid Rav Ula Berei Rabbi Loi. De Omar. Called tzarech echol nasan adi armoy b'Shabbos. All the needs of a chola, which is a chol she'ein bo sakana, could be done by a goy on Shabbos. Kid Rav Hamnuna. De Omar Rav Hamnuna. Davar she'ein bo sakana. Omer lenachri va'oseh. So a guy could do a da'araisa. What if there is no guy? Right? Could a Jew do anything? What could a Jew do? So, could a Jew do a d'Rabbanan? A Jew can't do a da'araisa. A Jew doing a da'araisa, that has to be a chol she'esh bo sakana. But what can a Jew do? Do we say that just like a guy could do a da'araisa, which is an issa d'Rabbanan for me, amir la'akum, then a Jew could do a d'Rabbanan? Right? This is d'Rabbanan, that's d'Rabbanan. Do we say that? Or do we say it's more chamor if the Jew itself is doing it actively? So that, as we'll see, is a major machlokes rishonim. 4 different opinions, and they're all quoted in Shulchan Aruch, as we'll see. So the Rush in source 22, which is the hemshech of the Rush that we saw earlier. The Rush is not sure how to paskin here. He leaves it b'tzarachiyin. But he's noted to say, maybe not. You don't say a d'Rabbanan is automatically like Amir la'akum. Kol tzar chol chol anasei de goy b'Shabbos. V'lo shani lon bei shvus deis bei ma'isa, lo shvus the less bei ma'isa. So Pashup Shad, it says, it could be done by a guy. It doesn't say any limitation. O shema ika leflugi bein chisar and aver l'chol she'ein bo sakana. Or maybe you should be mechalik between chisar and aver, which you could do a d'Rabbanan for. We saw that rush earlier. And a chol she'ein bo sakana. Maybe a Jew can't do a d'Rabbanan. Maybe a Jew can't do d'Rabbanan. V'tzarech iyan. So the Rosh is more machmir. The Rashba is mekel. The Rashba says in the Tshuva, if you could do Amir la'akum, that means you could do d'Rabbanan. A Jew could do a d'Rabbanan for a chol she'ein bo sakana. Says the Rashba, source 23. Gimel Reish Ayin Beis. Sakana Zever, V'chein Chol Sheish Bo Ein Bo Sakana. Afal Pisha Shochi V'mita Mito Cholyo. If he's sitting, is lying in bed, Osin Malacha De Goy. You could have a guy, that's a Gemara. You could have a guy do a malacha for a Jew. V'hush lo yeh oso lo ger toshav, as long as he's not a ger toshav or working for you. V'davka shlo lasos al yedei nisur Torah. Kibishol v'yafia v'chayotze bohen. Inami lahavilam derech rishus arabim. Avol dvarim she'ein b'hem elisa d'rabanan osin al yedei nafilo yedei Yisrael. Even a Jew, says the Rashba, could do a d'rabanan. Right? So that's the Rashba. A Jew could do a d'rabanan just like he asked a guy to do. The Ran said no. The Rush wasn't sure about it. The Ran, ours we're at the half, says Beferish not. The Ran is going to say no. A Jew cannot actively do a d'rabanan even for a chole she'ein bo sakana. This is based on a Gemara in Beitza. Gemara in Beitza Daf Chav Beis. The Gemara talks about Amemar Shari Lemichal Eina. Right, there's that eyeshadow again, which was healing. Amemar allowed eyeshadow on Shabbos. Ika da Amri Amemar Gufe. Some say Amemar himself, not just that he allowed it to himself. That he allowed the guy to apply the eyeshadow for him on Shabbos. Amalei Rashi Amemar Mai Daitech. Ravashi said, how do you allow this? What called Tzarech Lechola Osan De Nachri B'Shabbos? What we saw before, the Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Chavtes, source 21, that you could Amir Lakab is mutter, but that's only pure guy doing it. Hani Milecha Delo Messiah Badei. Says the Ravashi, that's only if you're not helping. Avol Marka Messiah Badei, but you're helping, you're opening up and closing your eye. Aren't you being active? And the Gemara answers, Messiah Ebo Mamish. No, we paskin Messiah is not really considered anything. But what's clear from the Gemara? If you are active, then it would be a problem. That's what the Ran says. What do you see from this Gemara? We're talking about a chol she'ein bo sakana, because it's it's the eye, which is the sakanas aver, which has at least the status of a chol she'ein bo sakana. So says the Ran, you see from here that any action by the Jew would be a problem. Amir la'akam is mutter, but not by a Jew. Says the Ran. Chol she'ein bo sakana nefesh, lo sakana sever, nihi t'shrei be malacha gemura de nachri. A goy could even do a daraisa. Kedemri neperak mefanin chol tzarchei chol anaz de nachri ein matirin lo ade Yisrael afilu shvush shel devrayim. A Jew can't do a d'rabanan. So for chol she'ein bo sakana, what's the halacha? Chol she'ein bo sakana. The Rashba, you could ask a goy to do a daraisa. The Rashba says a Jew could do a d'rabanan. The Rosh is not sure. The Ran says not allowed. The Ran says not allowed, and he quotes, "What's the Rayla for this case? The Isra of Kochel is only a d'rabanan, and still is not allowed." The Ramban holds like the Ran, right? His great grand Talmud, that a Jew can't do a d'rabanan, but only in the regular way. B'shinui he could do it. A Jew cannot do it even a d'rabanan, but for a malacha b'shinui he can do it, right? So the Ramban and the Torah Adam asked this. How is it? What is the halacha? Where they quote the differences in Gemara, the Chal, the Maisa, and he says towards the end, the second half, Achei Piruka de Milsa. Let me explain. If you're in this category of Chol She'ein Bo Sakana, you could ask a guy to do a malacha. Or a Jew could do a malacha b'shinui. A Jew could do a malacha b'shinui. A Jew can't do a straight out d'rabanan, a malacha d'rabanan, but a Jew could do a malacha b'shinui. That d'rabanan he could do. Avol shvus sheish bo ma'isa klomar davar anasa de Yisrael v'nasa kedarko b'chol lo itiru. A straight out regular issa d'rabanan he can't do. I'll agree with the Ran in that, but he adds on that a malacha could be done b'shinui. And that again, shinui is always makes it a d'rabanan, so that could be done for a chole she'ein bo sakana. The Rambam shita is unclear, right? The Rambam says in Hilchot Shabbos in source 27, the Rambam says chole she'ein bo sakana osan lo kol tzrachav ayde goy. A chole she'ein bo sakana, a goy could do anything. Keitzad kochal edem and a goy b'Shabbos al b'shein shab sakana v'mayut tzrachav ein bohen malacha osan afilu Yisrael. And if he does not require a malacha done. If what he needs is not a malacha, then even a Jew could do it. And he quotes some examples about lifting up the tendons of the ear and machzirin es hashever. So what does that mean? What does that mean if it's not a malacha? If it's a malacha, you could have a guy do it. If it is a malacha, then If it's not a malacha, a Jew could do it. So what is that saying? So the Beis Yosef says maybe that's saying even a derabanan can't be done by a Jew, even in the Sakonas Aver case. Right? This is arguing on the rush that we saw earlier. But the rush says the Beis Yosef says that maybe the Rambam includes anything that smacks of being like a derabanan, including Isurei D'Rabbanan that are like Isurei D'Araisa. Either way, that a big chumrah in how to understand the Rambam is very unclear. But either way, we have many different shitas about what is allowed to be done for a chola she'ein bo sakana, which somebody is bedridden, somebody has terrible pain, he can't function. What is allowed to be done? So the Shulchan Aruch quotes 4 opinions that we just saw. Shulchan Aruch Shin Chav Ches Yud Zayin, source 29. On page 338, chola she'nafa machmas choya l'mishka ve'ein bo sakana. A chola she'ish bo sakana, a Jew could do a d'Araisa. What's the halacha? Yesh matir afilu ein bo sakana sever. Some say it's mutter. Some say it's mutter for a Jew to do a d'Rabbanan. That's the Rashba in the Tshuva. A Jew could, just like he could ask a goy to do a d'Araisa, which is an issa d'Rabbanan for the Jew, so to a Jew could do a d'Rabbanan. The Yesh Omrim, second opinion, Shem Yesh bo sakanas aver osin. Sakanas aver, that you're allowed to do, because maybe that's automatic. Pikuach nefesh. V'mein bo sakanas aver ein osin. That's the Ran. Only sakanas aver, not a regular d'Rabbanan. The Yesh Omrim, the Ramban, Shem ein bo sakanas aver osin b'shinui. If there's sakanas aver, you could do straight. If there's no sakanas aver, you could do it b'shinui. V'yesh bo sakanas aver osin below shinui. And no sakanas aver, you could do it with straight. The Yesh Omrim, which is the Rambam, afilu yesh bo sakanas aver ein osin. That's the Beis Yosef shot of the Rambam. And the Shulchan Aruch says divrei asfara shlishis nirin. The third day, I like the Ramban. Meaning a Jew can't do a d'Araisa, a Jew can't even do a straight d'Rabbanan, but he could do a d'Araisa pashtus, even b'shinoi. Only b'shinoi. The Mishnah Berurah understands that the Taz and the Magen Avraham and the Gra all hold like the Ramban, also like the third opinion. The Chai Adam also passes like this, but he says if you can't do a b'shinui, then you can rely on the Rashba, which you can do it straight. Says the Chai Adam, also Yisrael Davar she'eino l'mid Rabbanan yesh matirin avodas rova poskim da'aser eliyasar adei shinui v'im efshar adei shinui v'lo adei nachri mutar lasos kedarko. If you don't have a choice, and the Mishnah Berurah quotes that the Ramban, that the Shulchan Aruch paskin like pashtus, like I just said, says that you could do a shinui even on an iser d'Araisa, so it's only a shvus. It's not a shvus dishvus. That's the pashtus. The Egleital says that beferish. The Egleital in source 31 in Tochein, which is the malacha of medicine. Hayim mitztar harbe achenechlash mimeno kol gufo chol she'ein bo sakana mutar liyisrael la'asos lo afilu malacha gemura shel Torah al yedei shinui. The Shulchan Aruch Rav also paskins that way. The Mishnah Berurah assumes not. Mishnah Berurah assumes that one cannot perform a d'Araisa with a shinui. Basically, he requires a shvus to shvus, a double d'Rabbanan, a shvus to shvus. The Ramban seems to be saying shvus, just one shinui for a d'Araisa. But the Sharat Tziyun in the Mishnah Berurah, the Sharat Tziyun seems to be machmer. The Shmir Shabbos summarizes everything that we've done over the past couple of minutes and notes that there are different opinions regarding a d'Araisa al yedei shinui. Did the Ramban really mean a d'Araisa al yedei shinui? Let's read it in the summary, source number 33. Chola she'ein bo sakana. Imein efsharis la'aso. So what do we know about Farish from the Gemara? A guy could do a malacha. A guy do a malacha for chola she'ein bo sakana. What could a Jew do? That's what the Rishonim discuss. Imein efsharis la'aso says anachas l'rapo oso adei Yehudi beheter. A chola she'ein bo sakana. If you can't do everything beheter, osam lo anachal anachas edei nachri. You get a guy. Even if a goy has to do a d'Araisa, that's allowed for a chola she'ein bo sakana. Fushit tzarach lo b'Shabbos v'lo l'tzarach motzi Shabbos. Aval Yehudi lo yichalatz Shabbos l'chol kazeh b'malacha gemura she'asur min haTorah. But a Jew is not allowed to do a d'Araisa for a chola she'ein bo sakana. Afilu b'mikra shel sakanas aver, even sakanas aver, as we saw, if it's just sakanas aver, that's what the Shulchan Aruch paskins l'chumra like the Rosh. As long as it's clear that there won't be a danger to the whole body. And it's also to do a d'Araisa even b'shinui shelo k'derech hasiyasa b'chol. But some matter it, as we just said, like the Egleital. Yesh b'gdolei poskim habatirim liyehudi lasos sorchi rifos shel chol l'shem osakana, if they do it al yedei shinui and that's what's done if needed. What if there's only to do a D'Rabbanan straight? To do a D'Rabbanan straight, so that's what we said. Sakana Sever, yes. Not Sakana Sever, we assume not, but the Rashba says that it is mutter, and if you need to, one can rely on that. Rosh Shlomo Zalman notes in the footnote, he notes more lakula to do a Daraisa B'Shinui if no non-Jew is available, like we saw from the Eglei Tal and from that understanding, and the Yalkut Yosef quotes Rav Avadia also, that if one needs to rely on that, a Jew could do a D'Rabbanan B'Shinui for a Chola She'ein Bo Sakana. Ad Kan, the first part of this Shiur, and then next time we have to get into medicines, Shchika Samamanim, and exercise and physical exertion. We'll get to that, Hashem, in the last Shiur of this volume. We will stop here.